Since dialogues are usually employed to give the user a way to provide information or make a decision, it's useful to have a way for dialogues to return information to the activity that invoked them. There are numerous ways you can accomplish this, but one of the cleanest ways to do this is by having your dialog fragment class declare a public interface that a host activity can then implement. Your dialog then simply calls the methods in the interface when corresponding events occur inside the dialog. So let's revisit our code for the simple dialog fragment. So let's add some code so that the activity can be informed of which button the user clicks. So at the top of the class, I'm going to add a declaration for a public interface named simple dialog listener. And obviously, you can name your interface whatever you want. I'm just choosing a generic name here. And my interface is going to have 3 functions. So on positive result, and it will take a dialog fragment as an argument. And then I'm going to paste this a couple more times. And so we'll have on negative result and on neutral result. So essentially, I'm defining an interface that corresponds to each of the buttons in the dialog. And so above this code, I'm going to create a private variable that will hold a reference to the activity that calls this dialog. So I'll write private simple dialog listener, and I'll just name that mhost. So that's going to refer to the host activity. So now we need a way to store a reference to the activity that invoked this dialog. To do this, our dialog class will override a function called onAttach. This function is called when the dialog is attached to its host activity. So I'll scroll down, and I'll put that function down here. And I'll override this. And it's called public void onAttach. And an activity gets passed in. And what I'll do is call the superclass, make sure everything's working. And then I'll set the value of my host to be a simple dialog listener of this activity. Okay, now that we have a reference to the host activity, we just need to call our interface methods at interesting points in the dialog. So let's go add callback functions to each of the button click handlers. So below this, I'm going to call mhost.on, and this one's the positive version. And I'll pass in simple dialog fragment this. And then I'll copy that and paste it, and this will be the negative result. And then one more time, that's going to be the neutral result. Okay, so now I've got my callback functions all hooked up. Now I just have to implement this interface on the calling activity in order to receive the callback functions. So let's modify the activity declaration to implement this interface. So to do that, I'm going to open up dialog activity. And at the top, in the implements list, I'm going to write implements simple dialog fragment dot simple dialog listener. So now you can see that I'm getting this little red squiggly, and that's because now that I've implemented this interface, I have to implement overrides of each of those functions because they are required. So I'm going to click on my little light bulb over here, and I'm going to choose implement methods. I'm going to choose to implement all 3 of these methods. I'm going to click OK. And all 3 of those method overrides are now added to my code. And in each one, I'm just going to log out a message. So I'm going to log out that the dialog positive result copy that. And this one's going to be negative. And this one's going to be neutral. So now we're at the point where we can build. So I'll save and I'll run this in the debugger. Okay, so the app has come up in the emulator, and I'm going to launch the dialog activity, and I'm going to display the simple dialog. And once again, I'm going to click on the positive button, and you can see that now in my simple dialog, the positive button was clicked, but the host activities callback function is now also being invoked. So now I have a way to pass results back to the host activity.